This is an important conversation to have. Around 1 in 7 young people in New Zealand suffer from a major depression disorder, while 1 in 5 will suffer from some kind of mood depression. 1 in 5, mood disorder. If you're an adult or a parent, you know what it's like being a teenager, how hard it can be to talk about your emotions. A recent study by the University of Rochester found teenagers who expressed their negative emotions in a more accurate way were less likely to suffer from depression than those who couldn't. But how do you get your teen to be more open about their feelings? For more, we're joined by our excellent resident psychologist, Jackie McGuire. Jackie, it's so nice to have you.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Nice to be here.
This is a hell of a big conversation, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's an important one to be having.
Yeah. How do we get our teens to talk to us?
Well, I think part of that is teaching people skills. You don't enter this world being able to linguistically describe your emotions. We all have them, but being able to apply language to them in a very specific and nuanced way takes time and practice. So I think the wider conversation is how are we teaching our young people about emotions and how to differentiate them.
And are we?
Well, I think currently we're relying on parents to do that, and you may be brought up in a household like me where a psychologist and a social worker raises you and you have family meetings from the very young age of 5, or you may not. And I think actually in our schooling system, we need to be going, we can capture all young people that enter through the system, and do we have a very useful and helpful way of being able to teach? And unless I'm otherwise don't know the accurate facts, I don't think we do
No,
that.
we don't. My sense is we don't. And as the parent of teenagers, and therefore I know lots of teenagers, it's a real random chance thing. It's completely arbitrary, isn't it? So it's home by home.
It is, and I don't actually think that's fair to put that burden fully on parents if they haven't had that learning in their life. So I think, that takes mental health professionals, psychologists, etc., working with government to create curriculum programs that enable us to teach wellbeing skills to young people.
I'm not trying to make a headline here, Jackie, or turn you into a news story, but are you calling for that? I mean, are you suggesting that needs to happen?
I think absolutely that would be important. We have the worst youth suicide rate in the OECD. Something has to change. And I think it is brilliant that we have a wellbeing budget that is putting counsellors in schools. But that to me is when things have already gone wrong, is when you seek out help often. So if we can come before that and put proactive things in place to teach our young people resilient skills like emotion regulation, which this study is highlighting, absolutely sets us up on the front foot.
Can you explain emotion regulation and how do you regulate your emotions when you're 14 or 15?
Yeah, sure. So emotions, we all have them. I want you to think of them like a bell curve. They come, they rise, they have a peak, and they dissipate. And actually what we know is that if you can put a label to it, that in itself helps you regulate that emotion, because it shifts your attention, if I get geeky in neuroscience on you for a second.
This is great.
From the middle of your brain, which is your fight or flight or survival part of your brain, which is where emotions come from, to the front part of your brain, your frontal lobe, which helps you then make clear decisions. And we know teenagers themselves don't have fully developed frontal lobes, so we want to get them in there as much as possible.
And the best way of doing that is?
So labelling is one thing, which when you are saying how do we teach people to label accurately, that's like, John, how do you know you're sad? You know you're sad because your shoulders drop, because you have a heaviness in you, because you might feel tearful, for example. So if we can teach young people to put body sensations or thoughts with their emotions, we start to teach them.
And if they do that and are able to name it and recognise it and describe it, then they're better able to talk about it.
Yes, and the second part of emotions is they're evolutionary. They're there to give us information. So if I can't label my emotion accurately, I don't actually know what it's trying to tell me. And if I can then work out the meaning behind my emotion, I can put a useful emotion regulation strategy in place. What do I mean by that? If I'm sad, for example, maybe I need a hug, or I need to be surrounded by people that care about me. If I'm really angry, that might be the last thing that helps calm me down. Maybe I need to go for a run or be out in nature. So if I can go, I'm feeling rejected, I'm feeling lonely, I'm feeling overwhelmed, I'm feeling anxious, I then can actually start to work out certain strategies that target that emotion.
How do you have those conversations with mum and or dad or a guardian or a grandparent or whatever when some of this feels, I mean, if you're 15 and you've just been dropped by your boyfriend or your girlfriend, you feel like you're the first kid in the world that this has ever happened to. You don't want to talk about it with mum and dad. Their advice is condescending and really annoying. What would they know anyway?
Well, I think part of that is timing. So we all know ourselves, if you are at the peak of that bell curve, we've missed it. We've missed the labelling and the regulation early. So if somebody is really high in intensity, if your teen is, there is no point trying to have a cognitive conversation with your teenager
So what do you
at
do
that point.
if they're high?
So if they're high, you give them time, you suggest a useful strategy. Hey mate, why don't you go for a run? Or should we go and, do something that distracts you, for example. I'm not going to sit and have a deep and meaningful conversation when you're in peak. So it's like if you can give suggestions in a why don't you do 1, 2 or 3 fashion, that actually provides a multi-choice for teenagers who don't have cognitive capacity at that point in time. And giving people time and space lets them calm and regulate. As long as people aren't at risk or they're not going to hurt themselves, give them time to calm down. Then when you've got them off the bell curve and lower in intensity, that's a really useful time to go back and dissect. Hey, what went on?
Yeah.
Return to it. What happened before that? What led to that? If you're feeling this, I wonder what that tells you. For example, if I'm really disappointed that I didn't make the netball team, that tells me that's really important to me and that I want to achieve or do well, for example. That then enables me in my brain to go, what do I need to do next time to get in? Do I still want to try? Do I need to try new techniques? Do I want to get a coach, for example? I can then problem solve around that. But if I get stuck in the peak, I'm never going to get to that problem solving behaviour solution finding approach.
That was fantastically useful. Boy, we've all been there, haven't we? Either first person as teenagers or as parents or as
adults.
Yeah.
I hate getting stuck in the peak.
But you think of adults, right? And it's like, what do we all do? if I only can say I feel bad, maybe I reach for my glass of wine all the time and that's my only regulation solution. And it's not helpful, So if we teach our young people, that will take us through life.
Yeah. Jackie McGuire, we can't thank you enough for that. I was hanging on every word. Really appreciate you coming in.
Have a good day.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.